All right. So, we'll go ahead and get started now. And for everyone coming in from the waiting room, if you guys could kindly mute yourselves so there's no outside noises. But all right, so thank you everyone for joining our dental student panel today. Thank you to our viewers in the Zoom meeting and also our dental student guests. We're really excited to read out all your questions and hear all the answers from our dental students. So first, we're going to start off with an introduction of our dental student guests, and then we'll go into the questions that we received in our Google form. And if you guys have any other questions, you can leave them in the Zoom chat, and Isabel will be monitoring the chat for any additional questions. So without further ado, we'll start by introducing our first guest, Jay Patel.
All right, hi guys. I'd like to start off by saying that I'm excited to be here and talk with all of you guys. My name is Jay. I'm currently a second-year dental student at University of Detroit Mercy. I majored in biology in the 7-year dental program. It's an accelerated dental program, which we do 3 years of undergrad and obviously the 4 years of traditional dental school. A fun fact about me is that I went to the Himalayas the summer before starting dental school. It was a very amazing experience, not necessarily the safest, but still very cool. And you can always feel free to email me any questions you have about taking the DAT or certain class or whatever, and that's my email. Thank you guys.
Hi guys, I'm very excited to be here as well. My name is Oriana. I'm from Venezuela originally. I'm now at B3 for Laredo. I major in biology at FIU here in Miami as well. And a very fun fact is that the fire alarm went off during my dental school interview. That was funny. And what else? Well, I can type my email in the chat so you guys can ask me any questions if you want to contact me later.
Hey guys, what's up? My name is Jess. I'm a D1 at Columbia in New York City. I graduated in 2019 from the College of New Jersey, where I double majored in bio and public health. And my fun fact is that when I was in high school, I was part of this orchestra, but we actually got hired by the show Royal Pains to be on an episode. So that was a cool experience. And I currently am working as a dental assistant part-time in the city. And I'm also just really involved with the pre-dental committees on ASDA for District 2, which is in this regional area of the Northeast and at Columbia. And feel free to reach out anytime with any questions or if you want to know about dental school at Columbia.
Hey guys, my name's Eleni. I am a second-year dental student and I go to Tufts. Fun fact about me, I started a YouTube channel my first year of dental school to help pre-dental students through their journey of dental school. I remember when I was applying and going through the process, I didn't really have much guidance. I didn't know who to ask questions to. So I really wanted to start this YouTube channel to help you guys out through the process. And if you wanted to look it up, it's just Eleni Marie. And then you can always reach me on my Instagram. I have it right here. It's Eleni Marie with 3 E's at the end.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Emily, and excuse the ugly car background, but I'm, LA traffic. So I'm a D1 at UCLA, and I majored in behavioral biology at Johns Hopkins, which is, on the East Coast. And a fun fact about me, other than the one that I have listed, is I really enjoy typing like on the keyboard, and I'm a pretty fast typer. I probably average like 130, 140 words per minute. So yeah, and I will also leave my email and Instagram in the chat box after this session is over. So
Hi everyone, I'm Laura and I'm currently a D3 at UOP and I'm graduating in about like 30-ish days. And I also went through the accelerated 2+3 pre-dental program through UOP. Was born and raised in the Bay Area, and my fun fact is that I can touch my tongue to my nose. And feel free to reach out anytime at my Instagram, Dr. Teeth Boutique, if you want to chat or anything like that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Chung, I'm a D1 student at UCSF. I graduated from UC Irvine Biosci degree in 2018. I'm born and raised in Southern California. I'm here right now. Came by to visit my mom and surprise her for Mother's Day. And a fun fact about myself is that during lockdown, I actually learned how to cut my own hair since all the barber shops were closed. So I've been the barber of like, I guess, my class in school. So I've been cutting like people at UOP or even in the med school or PT school. I'm so glad that I found this passion after I started dental school, because who knows, I would have been a barber instead. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for those introductions. And now we'll go ahead and go into the questions that pre-dental students submitted in our Google form. So the first questions I have are about the application. The first question is, what makes a good application and what do you think are the most important parts of one's application? So anyone can start it off.
I'll go ahead. So for the application process, I think something that's good to have is obviously you want to have a good GPA. That's probably going to be one of the most important things. But at the same time, you also want to be a well-rounded person. So being involved in a club or two, especially if there's a pre-dental club at your college, being part of that, I think is super important. It shows that you have interest in dentistry. And then if you can, finding community service or a job in the dental field, whether it's like an assistant in a dental office or, working at a front desk, going to local elementary schools, teaching them how to brush their teeth, something like that, dental related, I think is always good to have on your application as well.
I can go next. So I think all the points that Eleni said was very good. And I like to describe this question when people ask me with kind of like a theme of your application, because I feel like you're trying to tell a story when you're applying to dental school. And there's all these components that make up your story, like GPA, grades, DAT score, extracurriculars. But if you were to put an overarching theme on what I think is a good application, it would be a story of growth. So whether you started off as like not the best student, just showing like an upward trend, or increased involvement in extracurriculars or something that you're passionate about, or even if you were like that perfect student, just showing that you're not just a one-sided person and that you're developing yourself academically, interpersonally, with responsibilities is something that admissions will really look for. And that's something that you can say at your interview. So if you can find a way to make your, application stand out and not just read like a resume, that's my advice for that.
I'd like to add on to that. Jessica hit it out of the park. I was definitely going to say, just have an overall arching theme. It could be about growth. It could be about something you're passionate about. So for me personally, I'm the first healthcare provider in my family and college graduate. So one theme that I had was that like dental accessibility was really hard growing up. So with that in mind, when I went to community college and then moved on to a four-year university, I really wanted to make an impact in my pre-dental community. And what I did was I started a nonprofit organization that focused on community service and healthcare accessibility, and we started a mobile dental clinic that provides free dental care. And that's kind of like what my theme and what made me stand out as an applicant. And I feel like when you're delving into extracurricular activities, don't spread yourself out too thin. It doesn't have to be dental related whatsoever either. You could do whatever you're passionate about, and I think that's what makes you unique, and that's what makes you stand out as a candidate.
And I think another way to look at it would be, you know, you want to have a well-rounded, you know, application, but at the same time, you know, you want to make sure that your application is unique and individual to you. So, you know, like Brandon said, you know, yeah, it's great to have like an, you know, an extracurricular activity that you're truly passionate about, and not just to, you know, spread yourself thin across like 10 different clubs, you know, and be like a participant or like a member, right, of those clubs. But it's more meaningful, not to, you know, not just for like the application, but for you yourself, right? To, you know, pick a few clubs that, you know, you really feel like you're interested in what they do, and so you can play a more important position in them, maybe like take on a leadership position. And I think at the same time, making sure that your application is well-rounded would be really important as well. Like if you know that, you know, maybe your GPA is you know, lacking, then maybe you can take a few more classes to kind of raise your GPA, or look into post-bac or master's programs. You know, if your DAT score, if you feel like it can be better, then maybe, you know, think about taking the DAT again. So I think, like the others have said, you know, make your application like have a theme. I think having a well-rounded application is important as well, and just making sure that, you know, you really get the point across to the reader, to the application admissions officer, you know, why they should choose you over everyone else, right?
Awesome. That was really great advice. If no one else has anything else they want to add, I was going to move on to our next question. So a lot of students are wondering what extracurriculars you guys engaged in, such as clubs and volunteering and things like that. And what do you think made you stand out in your application?
I can go first. So I was involved in the Pre-Dental Society. I was also we had like a health coach program. So I would do one-on-one sessions with students and help them planning out their semester, how to use planners, how to plan out exams, kind of just that kind of stuff. So I did that as well. I also was in the art club because I really enjoyed art. I was an art minor. And then I also helped start a running club at my college because there wasn't one actually. So a few of my friends and I started a running club. And I feel like having all of those activities really helped me stand out. I did have a lot of volunteering as well. I went on a mission trip to Costa Rica with my Pre-Dental Society, and I did volunteering at the elementary schools, teaching the students how to brush. And I had a lot of stuff on my resume, and I think that really helped me stand out. But I just want to point out at the same time, my GPA also was not that great. And so when I was speaking to schools and I applied, they told me, you know, your application is great, your resume is awesome, but your GPA is not as strong. So that's important to keep in mind. So something like if I were to go back, I probably would have picked like 2 clubs that I really enjoyed. So probably the pre-dental club, and then something else that helps you stand out that's not like science related. But I mean, if you want it to be science related, you can, but make it like anything you want. And that's just something that looking back, I wish I had done, because I spread myself too thin, as some of the other students were saying. So, you know, having 1 or 2 clubs that you're really interested in and that you're in for 4 or the 3 years of college, because they like to see commitment and that you are really involved in whatever you decide to do. So that's my advice for that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like just picking a few that you're really passionate about, even if they're not related to science or anything like that. Just connect that, because honestly, there's so many people who are applying for dental schools. If you can stand out in any way, like if you're really into hiking, or if you're really into like playing dodgeball, like do that and then use that as a way to stand out. But the stuff that I did in undergrad were like, there's some people who started like origami clubs because it has to do with hand skills. There's also, I was part of Operation Smile, which was also having to do with dentistry because it was volunteer stuff. And then our Pre-Dental Society, which was really helpful because they would bring us all these volunteering events like the CDA Cares. So yeah, those are kind of some of the stuff that I did.
I just want to add, I had like a lot of, the extracurriculars, the research, but something that I think is different, I can add that's not just individual to my own experience, is getting involved with not only your pre-dental society, which I actually wasn't involved in at my school, but with the ASDA chapters at your local dental school, or now because everything is on Zoom, it's like actually such an incredible opportunity for all of you guys to go to webinars. And I would list the pre-dental days that I went to as a pre-dental student and in my gap year on my AdSAS application. And the dental school specific ones, I feel like, definitely like if they see their name on your application, that is going to stand out to them like no other. So I definitely did that for Columbia and, the neighboring schools in the area because I'm from New Jersey. So, but now that everything is on Zoom, like you guys could potentially like Zoom into any webinar at any school or like any district of ASDA or local chapter. So definitely take advantage of these opportunities while everything is still online.
I'll go ahead. One of the things, oh, sorry. One of the things that I did, I was involved in the Pre-Dental Society. I went on a mission trip, but since I was very interested in NOVA, I went ahead and before applying, I meet up with the Dean of Admissions and let him know that I really, like NOVA was my first option. I gave him my transcripts and told him that I wanted to be there. So I think that really helped me because he was the one interviewed me. So that really helped. So that's an advice.
I just like to add that it's definitely important to be a part of like your pre-dental club and do community service and volunteering, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily something that's going to set you apart because if you think about it, majority of the applicants are going to be involved with those things. So I'd say it's also important to do a lot of other things like others mentioned that you're passionate about and just things that could set you apart. For instance, I did a lot of art. I kind of started my own art club and I really tied that into my personal statement. And at my interviews, they really mentioned that a lot. And I thought that did sort of set me apart a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So our next question is about gap years. So did any of you guys take a gap year and what do you recommend doing during a gap year?
So I'll start this one off. I took a gap year and it's pretty interesting because my gap year was when COVID started, right? So it was pretty influenced by COVID, but I took a gap year primarily because I graduated college a year early, so I didn't feel comfortable applying the end of my sophomore year. So I decided to take a gap year. And I started the gap year working as a dental assistant for a general dentist. And basically, TLDR, I quit about a month and a half in. And then I took on a job as a clinical research coordinator at Johns Hopkins Hospital. I was really, really worried during interviews that they would ask, hey, you were working as a dental assistant. Why did you only work for a month and a half and then quit? Are you not interested, in dentistry? And I just really honestly explained to them that, one, the commute to the dentist's office was quite long. And then two, the general dentist that I worked with, she wasn't I think she wasn't very patient, and I think we had different expectations. I made it very clear that I'm not a registered dental assistant. A registered dental assistant. I have no experience, but I'm willing to learn. And she was paying me like minimum wage, and she just wasn't very patient. And I felt like she wasn't going to be a very good mentor. So I basically quit and worked as a clinical research coordinator for a few months before COVID hit and everything went remote. So that's basically what I did. But, in terms of what can you do during your gap year, I think it really depends, and you can kind of do whatever you want. I feel like, you know, if you want to work in research, you can totally do that. If you want to do a postbac or a master's because, you know, your GPA is on the lower end, you can totally do that. You can work as a dental assistant. A lot of my classmates worked as dental assistants. So it's kind of just up to you.
I also took a gap year, but unlike Emily, I took the 4 years to graduate. I just wasn't really ready to go straight through to dental school, having kind of made the switch from being pre-med to pre-dental around the middle of my junior year. So for me, that gap year was extremely important for me to really know that I want to pursue dentistry, and like whether that is you're able to do that when you're in undergrad, when you're in high school, even if you go through like an accelerated program like Jay or Laura, but you need to know that this is something that you want to do. So I worked at an endo office, which I would or wouldn't recommend, you know, working at a specialty office. I think general dentistry is, you know, what we're all going to dental school first for. But that experience working at the endo office was incredible, just because as difficult as it can be, you know, to work in a dental office for some of the reasons Emily was touching on, but I was able to learn the business side, I feel like, of dentistry, of like running a private practice. Obviously not through me, but through the endodontist I worked for. And I was their front desk for like 6 months during that time. And I did a lot of the marketing to general dentists and assisted, learned how to, you know, take x-rays and all these things. So I really feel like I got to, you know, see a really well-rounded view of dentistry, at least at that one practice. And then COVID hit. And then in June, as soon as like things were starting to open up again in New York City, at least, you know, they said dentistry is allowed to operate again. I actually like got another job dental assisting, and that's the one I have now that I've been able to maintain because it was in the city. So, you know, my point of view is like, just throw yourself in all these experiences, especially if you're going to take a gap year, as much as you can. I mean, you don't have to do something in dentistry, but if you have free time, like you're going to go to dental school, you're going to become a dental assistant or a dentist. You might as well, you know, use this time before dental school gets really crazy to learn these things, especially that they might not teach you in dental school.
So I also took a gap year, and kind of like I hinted before, when I was applying, they told me that my GPA wasn't good enough. So Tufts actually gave me a deferred acceptance. And I don't know like how many other schools do that, but basically they told me you have to do a master's program and you'll have your spot in the class of the following year. So I did the Tufts MBS program, and I feel like it was the best thing that happened for me. If you are someone who's struggling right now and your GPA is a little bit lower than you would like, honestly, the master's program helped me so much. I think without it, I would be struggling still, and I'm doing really well in dental school right now. And I just really learned how to study and how to prioritize my time and time management. So, you know, if you feel like you're struggling right now, a master's can really help you. And I actually took 2 years off. So the master's was one program, but I also took some time off from school because I was just really burnt out. So, you know, don't feel like you have to go right into dental school. Like if you are unsure or if you think you need time off, like that's okay too. Like don't compare yourself to your friends who might be getting in right away. I know that was really tough for me. So don't compare yourself to someone else. So I also did work in a dental office. So like Jessica, I think that's a great experience as well. If you want to be either an assistant or work at the front desk, I also did marketing as well. And having that experience will be huge for when you actually start dental school. So anything in the dental field, I think is great to do in your gap year, the master's program. If you need to boost your GPA, you want to do something productive, I think, because they're going to ask you, oh, what have you been doing with your time? Maybe you want to travel for a little bit. I think that's okay too. But make sure it's something that when they ask you in the interview, you're excited to talk about it and you have something to say. That's probably the biggest thing when you're deciding what to do. But I think something in the dental field will be probably the best option.
We have a question from the chat that's kind of related. It's from Ibrahim. He asked, is being a reapplicant bad or taking DAT multiple times? I'm reapplying this cycle and I'm a non-science major.
I took the DAT twice, so it's not bad to take it again. And I also know that a couple of my classmates were reapplicants, so that's not a problem either. So just keep trying, and hopefully you get it next time. So just keep trying.
Yeah, I'd like to add on, and just answering the whole gap year question too. So I went to community college and then I transferred to UC Irvine, and I stayed at UC Irvine for 2 years, and everything just went by so fast. Like I feel like I was trying so hard in community college to focus on the next step. Once I got into a university, it was like a big adjustment for me to think about applying to dental school. So when I had finished dental school, I had not taken my DAT, and I finished with KGPA. It wasn't too bad. I think I would have gotten accepted to a few places across the country, but I decided to do a post-bac at UCSF. And I actually don't regret it whatsoever, because with doing that program, I think it really prepared me for dental school. First of all, some of the classes that I took in my post-bac were the same. And also, I felt like it really enhanced my application and helped me get in to dental school on my first try. So I think whatever route you decide to go, just make sure that, as everyone said, it's very productive. It's geared towards your application. And once you already have applied, you can, work as a dental assistant like I have, or you could also enjoy your time. You work so hard to get to the stage where you can apply, and you've already submitted your application. And I think you should enjoy the time that you have left. And I don't think anyone has asked me what I did during my gap year. So, I think if you do use the time to be a bartender, like what my friend did in my class, it's completely fine to do so. And then in terms of reapplying and retaking the DAT, especially for reapplying, you want to make sure that your application is not the same from the previous application, that you showed growth, you have a growth mindset, and you've done something to change and enhance your application. Whether you think it was your GPA, you took DIY classes at a community college, or you did a formal post-bac, or you did a master's, or if it's DAT related and you think your DAT scores were the reason why, make sure that you increase your scores in every subject. And the same with if your volunteer hours are low, or your extracurricular activities, you don't have too many. Just delve into those things. What I typically like doing is before, when I was a pre-dental student, I would have all my volunteer hours, all experiences on an Excel sheet, and I would kind of make a bar graph, and I would see what avenues in the application is low or what's lacking. So if my volunteer hours were kind of low and my research hours were low, then I would try to find research opportunities or volunteer hours to have a well-balanced and well-rounded application. So that's what I'd recommend for a lot of you pre-dents thinking about applying soon, or even if you're in your first year. It's a good way to track what you've done in the past, so you don't have to think back. Everything's going to be all in one document, so I highly recommend doing that.
Awesome, thank you. Isabel, were there any other related questions in the chat?
We do have a lot of questions, but I think they're not related to gap year. But I can read them.
Sure. I guess if they're general questions that everyone can answer.
So we have another question from our chat. From a dental student's perspective, is it better to get the subjects on the DAT done before your application is submitted, or can they be completed before you finish undergrad? I'm applying this cycle for reference.
I can go. I personally advise you to just do it, because if you keep postponing, you're just gonna feel overwhelmed. So in my personal opinion, what I did, I just took all my classes and then I took the DAT. It may help, it may not help, honestly, because some professors, they just go crazy and not DAT related. But I just think it makes it easier for you. Just get it done.
That's true. And also you're gonna get senioritis like right after you submit your application. So you're probably not gonna want to take OChem after you got your application in. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I also waited until after I took organic chemistry before taking the DAT. I feel like taking that class, especially before taking the DAT, can really help.
Awesome. I think I'll go ahead and go into a question that someone submitted in our Google form. So we have some questions about interview tips. So what do you guys recommend for preparing for interviews?
Mock interview with as many people you can find, I would say, especially if you have dentists, even if they're like not mentors, maybe that's even better sometimes because they don't really know you super well, but people in the field who can share some perspective or, you know, can ask questions that pertain to the dental field. There's a pretty good like document that floats around on the internet with like, I want to say like 50 to 70 questions that are common dental school interview questions. I know I received that at one of the pre-dental days I'd gone to. And then also just, I think for me personally, I didn't like to script out what I was going to say. I'm a little bit of a rambler, if you guys can't tell, but I think that it flows a little bit more naturally when you just, like, if you can make a document with like the themes that you want to hit on certain questions, like, you know, your strengths and weaknesses, like, yeah, know what your strengths and weaknesses are, but, you know, feel free to ad lib the stories that you describe. And then to, I guess, follow up with that, then like I'm a big person on like storytelling. I think that's a really effective way to connect with somebody, especially an interviewer, where you're only talking to them for like 15 to maybe like an hour, 15 minutes to an hour. So being able to like have stories that you can tell in a concise way, to show like your experiences and where you come from and what makes you different, I would say would make you stand out at your interview. And being confident, like you can't fake it if you don't believe that you are supposed to get to dental school and that this dental school is for you. You know, I'm a big proponent of like fake it till you make it, but you have to also bring it to your interview. And that is the most important part of the application, in my opinion, of whether you're going to get into that dental school. And then my last recommendation would kind of just view it maybe as like not a first date, but like they kind of, you know about them, they know about you, and you're really just trying to see if you guys are compatible at that time. So really, like when you're at that interview, whether it's, I hope they're in person, you know, following this year, but really see if you would really go to this school, and because that's your one chance really to really get to see. But yeah.
I think Jess hit all like the major components for the interview, but like for me, I really enjoyed the interviews. I think they were probably my favorite part of the application process. I mean, granted, you know, mine were in person, so it was like pretty fun to tour the schools and talk to the current students. But I think it's really important to view the actual interview portion as a conversation. You know, I mean, I think it's important to not give your answers not to give it a very robotic and scripted feeling. You know, I mean, if you're one of, you know, those people who like having prepared answers for certain questions, I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I think it's important to, you know like some of the more common questions that you will be asked. For example, why do you want to be a dentist? I mean, you're probably going to get asked that question at every single interview. You know, strengths and weaknesses is another common question, and I think it's good to have prepared answers. But I think it's better to be able to kind of gauge, you know, your audience, right? Gauge who you're talking to. Is your interviewer a faculty? Are they part of the admissions office? Are they a current student? You know, kind of just know your audience and kind of try to figure out like what their vibe is. You know, if they're like a more formal, older person, then maybe use a more formal, respectful tone. You know, if they're maybe like another student, then you can kind of take the opportunity to have them get to know you as like what a future classmate would be like, right? You know, show them that yes, you would vibe in well with their community and you would fit in well with their class. So I think that's important. And also I think it's important to be prepared with to ask them some questions, right? Like to really show that you've done your research on that school and to show them why you know, really care about that school. And it is like a great way for you to get some of your questions answered, right? Because when else would you have the opportunity to get to talk to someone either on the admissions team or a faculty member or a current student face to face and ask them, you know, individual questions to just for your own knowledge. So I think those are all important as well.
Like Emily said, it's definitely important to not sound like you're reading from a script and have more of a conversation. But for me, I had a little bit of social anxiety at the time. So a way to prepare for me was I did make a document of like a lot of questions I found on Google or SDN per se. And I literally wrote down all the answers I would say, and I practiced them over and over again. So I'm not saying that didn't really, that actually helped me is what I'm trying to say. It made me sound like I wasn't, you know, so necessarily reading from script because it made it more natural in my head when I was discussing with the interviewers.
I also recommend you guys, if you're interested in a particular school, just go ahead and ask dental students because each school interviews differently. So in my opinion, like Nova, they're very, very chill. They like to, you can end up talking about football, you can end up talking about the stars, whatever. So that's really something that you guys should ask dental students.
Yeah, so as Oriana mentioned, yeah, definitely reach out to like the dental students at that school just to get a vibe of like how the interview's like. Sometimes if, at least for the interviews that I went to, they were very conversational. So one strategy that I did was that when I was asked the first question, so tell me about yourself, I geared it towards things that I knew that I was confident in elaborating and very passionate about. So whether I highlighted research, I highlighted, you know, an organization I co-founded, and all the other things that I was very passionate about, I highlighted that and I made sure that I brought it to the interviewers' attention so that they would ask me more about it. And then I'd be super stoked because I knew like it was going to go that route. But I definitely think, especially for schools that are very conversational, you know, and you tell me about yourself, just highlight the things that you find most important because more likely than not, they're going to ask you to follow up on that. And another thing is that, you know, sometimes you do get really nervous when you like are in the interview. And sometimes what I like doing is that if I'm still thinking about the question, I would ask the interviewer to say the question again so that I could think of a good answer. So sometimes that's like a tip that, you know, I recommend to people because some people, you know, like for me, I get sometimes anxiety depending on who the interviewer is. And like, if it's some like tough faculty member where he seems like, you know, kind of intimidating, I would ask him to reiterate the question while I'm thinking of an answer. So I think that's a good way to do. And what really worked out for me was that I made a Google Doc and I actually typed out my answers and kind of rehearsed it, at least for the most important questions. To make it sound as natural as possible. Because there's sometimes you forget like some important parts of like what you want to say. And sometimes memorizing is the best way to go, at least for me. And lastly, I just wanted to add on was that when you get an interview, you're there for a reason. Just always remember that you're there for a reason. So don't ever psych yourself out and think that the person next to you is so much better than you. Like you're there because they wanted you there. And I think the whole part of the interview day is to just see if you're a good candidate for the school and if you would vibe well with the other classmates that got accepted. So just always remind yourself that when you're at your interview day.
And one quick thing after what Brandon said, I think it's really important. sometimes for me, if I can't think of an answer like on the spot, I actually, would tell them, I'm like, hey, can we skip this question for now? And then can we come back to it at the end? And they're like, yeah, that's totally fine. And then I think one of my interviews, I forget at which school, but basically they never went back to that question. And I actually brought up that question to them. And I was like, hey, like earlier you had asked me blah, blah, blah. I didn't have a great answer, but now I have one, and I told them the answer. And I feel like they really appreciated that I took the initiative to kind of, go back and answer a question that I didn't have an answer before. So I think it's completely okay to just, you can, if you can think fast enough and say like, can you repeat the question? I couldn't think of an answer in 5 seconds. So I was like, oh, can we come back to this question? So I think that's also completely acceptable to do as well.
Awesome. That's really great advice. We also had a lot of questions about personal statements in our Google form, which for me, I feel like it's one of the most intimidating parts of the application. So I was wondering what your recommendations are for approaching the personal statement and writing a good personal statement that stands out.
For my personal statement, I wrote probably 4 or 5 versions that were completely unrelated. Each one I just started from beginning to end, and then wrote a different story. And I just kind of told a story in the beginning and then explained the whole thing near the end. But by having multiple stories, I would have different people read it and then see which one they thought was the best one. So that's how I did it. I just kind of wrote multiple and then kind of combined them and then kind of picked a few.
I also think one of the best things to do is have multiple people read it and just keep asking people, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And something that I also like to tell students is you want to make it really descriptive. And like Laura said, like a story. So make sure you're making the reader feel like they're in your shoes and they can picture the scene that you're in. And I always feel like starting off with a scene so that you draw in the reader and you really want them to be interested in what you have to say, because they're going to be reading so many of these and you don't want to sound like the same, I want to be a dentist because I had this experience. Start off with a scene like, I remember I had those red shoes on when I walked into the dental office. Make sure they can picture themselves in your shoes and that you have really descriptive imagery and use lots of adjectives and make it just sound, you want it to sound really good. So that's one thing, and having multiple people read it over and over again.
I think all those are great tips. I think what I'll add is maybe the exception to those, because I think with the personal statement, it's easy to kind of put yourself in a box, maybe with oh yes, it's why do I want to be a dentist? And it has to be about dentistry. I think I'm a example of somebody who didn't even talk about dentistry until 75%, 3/4 of the way into my essay. And for me, especially having made that switch so late to dentistry, I just focused a lot on the aspects of myself that eventually, this is the reason why I'm going to be a great dentist. And this is how I know. And so it doesn't have to be about dentistry itself. It's about aspects of your journey that have led you to this moment. And that may not always be something in the dental chair or from a shadowing experience. And then I think definitely you need to have some eyes on your personal statement. Don't leave it to the last minute. But in my personal case, I feel like I would prefer to keep it around maybe 5 or so serious readers. And I say that because for me, getting so much feedback and so many opinions from people, as well-intended as that is, it can kind of get overwhelming for me. And then I would start questioning whether I should make that change. And I think your voice is extremely important to keep as your voice in the personal statement. And sometimes it can get lost with everyone's opinions kind of shooting at you. And then I think maybe even more important than getting new eyes to read it, maybe the like one or two people who've read it from the crap version that it was when like I wrote it at 2:30 in the morning as like a diary entry to like the refined version, 50 drafts later. So if you can have somebody do that for you, a dental student friend, or, someone who's a great writer, maybe someone who's not even in the dentistry field, I would say that's my advice for a personal statement.
And kind of just echoing on what Jess said, I also think that you don't want like 50 random people reading your personal statement, because they're going to have 50 random like different thoughts, and they're going to tell you completely different things, and it's just really hard to kind of organize that feedback. So for me, I think I also had around like 4 or 5 people read it, but I made sure to kind of ask like a variety of people to read it, if that makes any sense. So one of them was my research PI. I've worked with him since the freshman year of undergrad, so I was really close to him. So I asked him. I think I asked a current dental student so I can get their perspective. I had asked my best friend to read it, and then finally I went to so at my college, and I'm sure at a lot of colleges, there are like writing centers, and there's like a graduate student that can help you edit. So I wanted a perspective of someone who doesn't know me at all, and just purely focus on the like the grammar and the sentence structure of my personal statements. I think it's important to not have too many people read it, but also have people from different backgrounds read it, if that makes any sense. And then kind of like what Jess said, like I didn't really write my personal statement on, oh, this is why I want to be a dentist. I mean, of course I weaved that idea in, but it wasn't like 100% just circled, circled around that. And I think I've had a couple of interviewers kind of like bring up my personal statement to me. They're like, I really liked your personal statement. So, I think what I did wasn't, it wasn't bad. I just kind of talked about how, like, the different areas that I was interested in prior to dentistry, because I didn't, know that I wanted to be a dentist from like the get-go. It was actually wasn't until like the sophomore year of my of college. So, I weaved in different themes, and then I also had like a little poem in my personal statement. So I'd say, don't be afraid to make it a little different, but make sure that it's unique to you, and that your voice really gets through to the reader.
I also think it's helpful to have like themes, or even an overlying theme that you could relate to dentistry. For instance, as I mentioned before, I talked about my art, and I mentioned that throughout my personal statement, and I really did think that helped set me apart from other applicants.
Awesome. So before I move on with my Google form questions, Isabel, do we have anything else in the Zoom chat?
Yes, we do, but they're not related to personal statement. But
okay.
We did have somebody ask, how different is dental school in Canada versus USA?
I think all of our dental student guests are in USA.
Never mind. Okay. Is it?
I know someone who is from Canada and they're going back to Canada after graduation. The thing is, if you live in Canada and you want to come to the United States for school, you have to take the Canada boards, but we don't offer the Canada boards here. So then you have to fly over to Canada to take the boards. So that's the only thing.
That's interesting.
Somebody asked, is it okay to take classes in community college?
Yes, I did, and it worked perfectly.
Yeah, I took classes in community college, but I just recommend that if you are taking the required bio classes for dental school, I suggest taking it at like a 4-year university, just so that you could show that you could handle the rigors of like the dental school level of didactic classes. And I think that's what a lot of admission reps recommend, even the one at UCSF also.
Awesome. So any other questions, Isabel, or else I can go to my Google form questions?
Yeah, there was one from the YouTube live chat that asked, can you describe a day in the life of a dental student and what was your motivation to go into dentistry?
Um, for day in the life, I feel like it really depends on which year you are. So I would say for UOP, first year was mostly 100% classes. So we were just doing classes 24/7, and we had exams probably 2 times a week, or sometimes up to like 4 or 5 times a week. Wait, wasn't that bad? Probably like 4 times a week. And then second year, it was a combination of classes in the morning and then clinic in the afternoon. And then we alternated with half of the class because there wasn't enough space for everyone. And then now third year, it's 100% clinic. So we have class once a week in the mornings. And then that's about it. So it really depends. But first year, I was in school from 8 a.m. sometimes until like way like 10 p.m. It really depends, but also it kind of depends on how good you are at time management.
I can kind of describe the Columbia structure since I feel like we kind of also have a unique setup at our dental school. So we are integrated with the medical school for the first 18 months of our didactic education here. So that means we take classes with the medical students and take their exams and basically have to do our dental stuff on top of that. So in our first year, that's pre-clinic and dental anatomy classes, and then increasingly as med school concludes and we progress in our education, it becomes solely dental related classes, and then we have clinic in our third and fourth years, and then something else that makes us different is that we are a pass-fail school. So that is something that like med school is cool, fine, but I don't think like I would choose to do it unless it were pass-fail. And I say that only because it's not that I don't enjoy the curriculum. I really do. It's the reason I came here. But we're going to be dentists, and I also want to have time to focus on pre-clinic and things that extracurriculars and my job, dental assisting. And I really have to give Columbia a lot of the credit because the only reason I can do my part-time assisting job and kind of like have a life outside of like med and dental school is because it's not only pass fail, but we have block schedules. So we don't have any exams for 5 to 7 weeks. And then we'll have like one finals week where we don't have any class, no commitments whatsoever. The school kind of just like shuts down for us. And we just study for these exams and we take them when we want during a certain prescribed time. And it just really makes for what I think a lot more of a collaborative environment than what it would be if we were not pass fail. And I think, you really got to ask a lot of the students what their life really is like. It's definitely going to be challenging at every school. But to be completely honest, like after comparing my schedule to a lot of my friends, even though, I'm in med school, I would, for me, prefer the setup that I have. And therefore, I'm really happy that I chose the school that I'm at because it's just really compatible to my lifestyle. So, that's definitely something you guys want to keep in mind.
At Tufts, we start preclinical labs in the first year. So first year, you have lectures, and then you also have the preclinic in the afternoons. Second year is heavily preclinical labs with lectures as well. Third and fourth years, you're mostly just in the clinic. So it's a little bit different, I think, from school to school. So that's probably something you want to look into when you're looking at schools, like what the schedule is like. Tufts is a little bit different. We have exams about once a week. We never have more than 4 exams. And yeah, I think every school is different. So that's something that you'd have to look into for each school.
Awesome. So since it is 9 p.m., I wanted to end the session with one final question. Is there any last pieces of advice you would like to give our pre-dental viewers?
I'll start. Well, my first advice is since the pre-dental view, it may be kind of overwhelming, hard. Like sometimes you're gonna say, no, there's no way I'm doing it. I'm gonna go to another profession, whatever. But at the end, you're gonna do it. It's gonna be okay, because if we all do it, you guys can. If you don't get it the first year, just go ahead and try the second year, and that's it.
I will say try to get your application in just as soon as you can. It is a rolling application. But if you, for one reason or another, if you don't get your application in by June or whatever, it's not the end of the world. So for me, my application actually wasn't fully completed until mid-September, which is late. Don't recommend it. But the only reason why mine was so late was my committee letter at my college. It was one of the last ones to be completed, so I kind of got screwed over. But it's fine. I was really, really worried because during like August or during October and November, like all my other pre-dental friends, they were like getting interviews, and I wasn't getting anything. So I was like freaking out. But they did eventually start come rolling in. It was just a little later than I would have liked it. So I would recommend getting your applications in as soon as you can, and just kind of try to don't be stressed out all the time, because you don't need those gray hairs, and you're going to be a dentist. Like maybe, it takes, 1 or 2 or even more tries, application cycles to get in, but enjoy the journey.
I would say my advice is as big of an accomplishment it is to get into dental school, I would say, keep it in perspective that this milestone, it doesn't get any easier after that. And I hate to say that I'm only a first year dental student, but the journey is long. So definitely preventing burnout is really important to me. And I think I try to prioritize my mental health, my happiness. You don't want to kill or really suffer trying to get into dental school. If the 4 years of dental school and then residency and then working as a dentist, if you're not really sure you want to do it, don't do it. It's not worth it. And I really feel like whatever you need to do to make sure that this journey for you is going to be as painless as possible, and you're going to enjoy it, and that you're not going to look back and hopefully not regret an expensive decision to go to dental school. Do what you need to do, work on yourself. It's really easy to put the dental school decision or acceptance day as that moment and that pinnacle of oh my God, I'm going to be so happy once I get in, and my life is just going to be great. And yes, that happiness is real. That high you get from getting into school, knowing that you're going to go be a dentist, it's surreal. But I just caution against just setting up unrealistic expectations for yourself. Just prepare yourself. It's going to be a long journey, but it's going to be worth it. And don't just search endlessly for happiness. You gotta work on yourself and create the journey for yourself too. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I love how Jessica mentioned that. I think just the whole pre-dental journey is like a marathon and not a sprint. You tend to really burn out even as a pre-dental student, just trying to tack on all these experiences and enhance your application. But the most important thing, I think, if I'm looking back at everything, is just enjoy your time as an undergrad. Because I feel like dental school is so different from undergrad for sure. And I guess I would say that I don't have as much free time as I did in undergrad to do certain things. And I just wanted to assure you guys that are sacrificing, working long hours, going to the library on Saturdays and Sundays while your friends are out, it's going to be worth it. You're going to look back at all of the hard work, and it's going to pay off, and it's going to pay dividends. So just keep working hard. I think the easiest thing is to give up. But once you're at the finish line and you're in dental school, and perhaps you're in a DentalShadowers Zoom call, passing it forward to the next generation, it's just going to be all worth it. And feel free to reach out to me on my dental Instagram. I love mentorship. I really value it. I think that's the one reason why like I'm here today. And yeah, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If no one else has anything they want to add. Okay, great. So thank you all so much for answering all of our questions and providing so much valuable insight. We all really appreciate your time. And I wish everyone best of luck with their future endeavors. And thank you to our viewers for also providing us with questions. We'll be sure to post the social media of all of our dental student guest speakers in our group me. So if you guys want to head over there in a few minutes, I'll post it there. Awesome. Thank you guys again.
Thank you.